Welcome to Man in America, a voice of reason in a world gone mad. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. Right now, there is a very significant event happening. And you can see all the indicators of this event if you look at what's happening with money, currency, gold and silver, stock market, Bitcoin, etc. It's not just an event where, oh wow, silver's going up or gold's going up or Bitcoin came down. It is so much bigger than that. And on this show, I had to say I have a hard time figuring out the kind of topics I want to cover. Because if you go pull up the homepage of Rumble to take a peek, and you've got Tim Pool, he's arguing with the Liquid Death CEO. You've got the quartering and Crowder arguing with the black men. You've got Kash Patel's devastating news. You've got John Bolton information. And I'm not downplaying these events because it's important to know what's happening day to day. But for me, I don't have much interest in these particular events. I don't. Now, some of them I try to cover, and I've thought for a long time about doing like a daily news show, but I am much more focused on what are the big things that are coming that will change our way of life or affect us in very significant ways. What are the signs that we can see? What are the indicators? And that's just where my mind goes. And so right now, especially this past week, actually the past couple weeks, or actually realistically, since the beginning of this year, we've seen some major things happening within the precious metals market. And again, it's not just about precious metals. It's about precious metals are the canary in the coal mine for the global financial system. Earlier this year, we saw there were indications of mass amounts of gold being repatriated, gold being flown back into New York. There's the idea of auditing Fort Knox, the idea of a gold revaluation. There were a lot of discussions about this. So, I've done a lot of interviews talking about the LBMA and the paper markets and what's cracking. And even the show I did this week, I did about silver and looking at what's happening with the silver markets and how the paper markets are basically crashing and, explaining the history of how we got to where we are with the overall currencies. And so tonight's show is going to go even bigger than that. Because if you look at, again, what's recently happened, which I'll show you a little tweet about kind of summary of what we're kind of experiencing, even looking at silver prices and even looking at the paper market breaking, and if you haven't watched my show before this one, I highly recommend it because I'll give you a lot of information there that helps build up to this discussion. It's very, very important what's happening. But what I'll be getting into tonight is, I think, much larger. It's about something that experts refer to as a global monetary reset. This is what I believe is going on right now, is a global monetary reset. And I'll explain that. In today's show, I'll explain what that means. I'll give you a lot of details and information to help you understand it because it's complicated stuff. It's taken me a lot of research, a lot of interviews, a lot of podcasts to even form an elementary understanding of what's going on. But I think that I'm starting to get it. And I want to share with you my understanding of what is happening because if I'm correct, it is probably the most significant event of our lifetimes in terms of changing the way that the world works and changing the way that we live and changing the way that we transact and the way that we invest and everything. It's that significant. But before I dive in, just a few quick things. First off, thank you for being here. I appreciate you being here. I really do. If you're watching on Rumble, big thumbs up to you for supporting a free speech platform. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button. It's really important. Whatever platform you're on, make sure you hit it. But Rumble especially, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. Also, leave a comment. I love reading your comments. I read almost every single comment. I'm not good at responding to them, but I promise you, I read almost every single comment. So I thank you for that. Also, every show I do is done as a podcast as well. So if you want to listen instead of watch, just go to your favorite podcast app and search for Man in America, and you'll find me on there as well. Okay. I'm going to pull up this tweet from Mr. Uppy, fun name, just as a kind of summary of what's happened with specifically the silver squeeze and everything. This helps kind of get us to where we're going to start today. So Mr. Uppy says, for the first time, even retail buyers are starting to feel it. One investor shared that her bullion order from a major dealer, usually shipped the next day, was suddenly delayed 5 days. It might sound minor, but it is the first visible crack in what is happening behind the scenes. Last Friday, October 10th, the world's largest silver market in London completely seized up. Liquidity did not thin out or slow down, it vanished. The so-called free float of physical silver available for delivery hit effectively zero. That's alarming because London is the heart of the global gold and silver price discovery. Every miner, refiner, and bank uses those daily benchmarks to fix their prices. Benchmark fixes to price their trades. But the system is not backed by real metal. It runs on unallocated paper claims that outnumber physical supply by staggering multiples. For decades, those paper promises create fake abundance. Billions of ounces traded daily in London's spot market, even though global mine supply is only a fraction of that. The result has been chronic underpricing, chronic overproduction, and the slow depletion of real inventories. Now the paper system is breaking down. The zero liquidity event, backwardation, and 200% lease rates in London are the first clear signs of stress. It is what happens when too many people are holding IOU silver demand delivery all at once and there's not enough metal to go around. Some call it logistics, but we have heard that excuse before. The truth is that the mountain of synthetic supply in London is collapsing and the physical market is taking control. When paper fails, metal reprices fast. Silver's real value is surfacing not as a speculative trade, but as a scarce monetary and industrial metal that has been suppressed for decades. The repricing has only just begun. Now, we're seeing this, right? We're seeing record gold and silver prices. Silver dropped a little bit today, but it's still well over 50. Gold is well over 4,000. And it's not necessarily the height, it's how quickly it's achieving this height. And a lot of experts are seeing this as a very concerning sign. Now, look, if you hold physical gold and silver, you look at that and like, wow, like my silver's worth 40% more than it was a few months ago. Like, that's great. But something bigger is going on here. And I'm going to pull up just a few different tweets here talking about what's actually happening. So Peter Schiff, he says, this is getting serious. Gold is at 43.70. It could hit 4,400 tonight. This was yesterday. That's a 10% move in just over a week. Something big is about to happen. And this is what today's show is. What is this big thing about to happen? When he says something big is about to happen, what does that mean? Here's another post. Gold has had these types of extreme gains. Gold has had these types of extreme gains in a short period only a few times in history. And each time it was due to something major breaking in the traditional finance system. Central banks, sovereigns, and whales know something is coming and they are hedging. But what exactly? That's what we're getting into in today's show. Here's a post from Jesse Colombo, who has a fantastic report called The Bubble Bubble. The spot price of gold surged 2.81%, closing at a fresh all-time high of 43.26. It's going parabolic at this point, and I'm really concerned about the message it's signaling. There's a good chart for you. This is showing from July to current. That's not normal. That spike right there, that's showing something. Something's happening. Here's one of my favorite accounts to follow, this Ben Rickard account. Something ominous is coming. You can feel it. It will be made aware in the public consciousness soon. And here's a post from Zero Hedge. Gold now full-blown Weimar mode. Only thing left is for stocks to flip correlation and follow into the final debasement abyss. So I'm going to be talking about this. Okay, what happened in Weimar Republic? We'll be getting into that. And also, what's he referring to when he says only thing left is for stocks to flip correlation? We're going to talk about that. So I've got a video to show you. This is a post from Gold Telegraph. And this is a video from about a year ago. And I'll play. The video is about 1 minute 21 seconds. 1 minute 21 seconds. He says, last year, billionaire and legendary mining entrepreneur Pierre Lassonde told me, The Shanghai Gold Exchange is going to turn into a casino, and that's when we'll see real crazy prices. Fast forward to today. The People's Bank of China is using the Shanghai Gold Exchange to court central banks from friendly nations, encouraging them to buy bullion and store it inside China's borders. So I'm going to play this for a little bit because now he mentions the Shanghai Gold Exchange, which I'll be talking about a lot in the second half of today's show, because you have to understand what's happening with China and the BRICS nations is very important to understand the overall situation right now. But part of what Pierre is going to explain in this discussion is what help us to understand what Zero Hedge is talking about when the only thing left is for stocks to flip correlation. I'll play this for you now, 1:21, and then we'll continue.
The Chinese have a real propensity for gambling, and my thinking is that the Shanghai Gold Exchange is going to become a bit of a casino type of thing. And that's when we're going to see the crazy, crazy prices. And when I say crazy, so one of the, probably you've seen me talk about the Dow Jones Gold ratio, okay? Yeah. And you can use the S&P if you want to gold, same difference type of thing. That ratio has been 1-to-1 over the last 110 years. And that was in 1980 when gold was 800 and the Dow was 800. And same thing happened in 1934 when the gold came up to $35 and the Dow, which was 360, came down to 36. Okay? Yeah. Well, today the Dow is 44,000. Okay? So if the Dow doesn't come down, you say, like, can gold go to 44,000? I know the number sounds completely insane. Maybe the Dow will be cut in half, but that's still 22,000. Think about this, okay? Yeah. Can it go there? Absolutely.
So, what he's talking about there is really, really, really important. He's talking about the ratio of the Dow to gold, the value ratio of Dow to gold. Now, instead of me trying to explain it to you, I've got a fantastic article on Zero Hedge that really helps to explain this, but hammer this point home. This is actually via Shift Gold, published on Zero Hedge. And this is a very important article to understand what's going on right now. It says, measure assets in gold, not dollars. It's not too long, so I hope you can pay attention to this. And this came out this morning. A new round of tariff announcements from the Trump administration sent markets reeling, with gold dropping briefly, only to soar back to new record highs above 4,300 today, signaling collective doubt in the system itself as investors rush to protect themselves with hard assets. Collectively, markets are reaffirming gold's role at the center of sovereignty, monetary stability, and global reserve strategy, even as it has become a favorite target of Keynesian ridicule as everything from a barbarous relic to a waste of physical and financial space in investment portfolios and balance sheets. Yet confidence in U.S. debt continues to decline, with the safe status of treasuries increasingly being questioned. That's why now, for the first time in decades, collective central bank gold holdings have surpassed the value of their treasuries. That's a very significant point to highlight there. The U.S. dollar is the world reserve currency. So countries around the world have held U.S. treasuries as a way of backing their own currencies for trade, etc. But now, for the first time in decades, the central banks are holding more gold than the value of their treasuries. So when we talk about a global monetary reset, this is starting to show us what's happening. So he says, central banks now hold 20% of all gold ever mined, protecting themselves from the effects of currency debasement, even as they ironically cause it. Instead of earning yield by holding treasuries, they continue to stock up on gold, which is a powerful statement against the results of their own monetary experiments. Because gold is very difficult to manipulate compared to other asset classes and isn't subject to the whims of central bankers or the ability of an overdebted, overspending country to pay back what it owes, central banks are rushing to stock more of it. While uncontrolled debt and issuance, dollar weakness, and a massive sovereign balance sheet Central banks buy gold to protect themselves from exactly the same problems that were caused by centralized control. Meanwhile, investors, commentators, and asset managers love to sing about stock market highs while ignoring the problem. These stocks are being measured in a currency that's constantly being debased. And this is the key. You look at everyone talking about, look how high the stock market is. It's at record highs, 45,000. Look at Bitcoin, record highs. We're measuring those things in the dollar. So if the dollar is losing its value, if the dollar is being debased, is the stock market really as high as we think? Is Bitcoin measured in dollars really as high as we think? He says when you price them in gold, you're using a true measuring stick that hasn't been reconfigured by central bank wizards. Suddenly, denominated in real money, most other booming assets don't look nearly as good. Equity indexes like the S&P 500 are well off their nominal highs when you measure them in gold instead of dollars. Even as equities rise in dollar terms, zoom out, and those gains often fail to beat gold's rise. He says that's because asset booms are being driven by manipulations in the form of money printing, low interest rates, and liquidity instead of real fundamentals. Here's a post here. It says Dow Jones to gold ratio is about to cross a level only seen 3 times in history: 2008, 1973, and 1929. So if you look at this chart right here, this is showing the Dow Jones to gold ratio. And what they're saying is that the ratio that we're seeing now has only been seen 3 times in history: 2008, 73, and 1929. And what that's telling you, those instances are when the ratio was off, and when the stock market, the Dow Jones, became much greater in value than what gold was at that time. Oops, let me go back to that. So let me zoom back out here. Oh, sorry, there we go. Okay, so continuing. Bitcoin is no different. Bitcoiners who love dunking on gold are celebrating recent latest all-time highs, but love to ignore the fact that real gold is massively outperforming digital gold. A spectacular Bitcoin crash after Trump's recent tariff announcements brought Bitcoin down from its highs of over 125,000 down to 107,000, while gold held its ground. He says Bitcoin is crashing. It just dropped below 112,000. In terms of gold, Bitcoin is down now over 25% from its record high in August. It still has a long way down to fall. Okay, so Schiff said on Twitter last week, he said, today is another example of why Bitcoin is not digital gold or even digital silver. Gold closed the week up 3% above 4,000, and silver rode 4.4%, closing above $50. Both represent record high weekly closes. In contrast, Bitcoin dropped over 5%, double the decline of the NASDAQ. So he's saying that despite being the subject of status quo ridicule, gold is still the king of financial assets. Wall Street's reflexive scorn of gold is due to the fact that gold exposes the Keynesians as frauds and sometimes thieves, and threatens the premise of existence of an entire category of academics and professions, from Ivy League academics to mom-and-pop retail investment advisors. If a 5,000-year-old rock performs just as well as a traditional 60-40 stock bond portfolio, a lot of people are wasting their time and money. When you measure much of the financial world in gold, many of the supposed winners lose their luster. Okay, so basically what they're saying here is that if you measure the price, whether it's the stock market or it is the Bitcoin, that when you measure them against gold, because before gold became so suppressed, gold was the canary in the coal mine, same with silver. And so the gold before it should be staying in line with a lot of the other assets. But what's happened as they've suppressed the price of gold, and the dollar, it seems like the dollar is going up and up and up, and these assets are they're measured in dollars, the stock market, et cetera, they're booming. But they're also pumping an insane amount of money into the system, and the dollar is losing its value. And so this is one of the ways that people have been tricked. Okay, so continuing here. Oh, that's the tweet that we just opened. Gold is sending a message. We're saying that huge changes have started to arrive within the world's monetary system. The role for the dollar is declining while gold is slowly returning as a cornerstone to the international financial system. Monetary system resets like this happen only once or twice every 100 years and takes years or even decades to unfold. So this is what we're witnessing. Okay, so similar to when the video I played, he mentioned that before it was the Dow to gold ratio was very similar, so almost 1-to-1 very often. But now we've got gold at over 4,000 and Dow's over 40,000, right? It's the ratios have come completely unhinged, which that shows us, if we look at the role that gold has played as a stable monetary instrument, aside from the suppression, but what it does is it showed us the real value. And so when you see Bitcoin surging, the stock market surging, it's a warning sign, because it's like the dollar is losing its value and they're pumping so much into the money supply. So continuing, central banks have been loading up on gold since 2002. They know what's coming. When trust in fiat fades, gold becomes the anchor. Own gold or be owned. This right here is a cumulative change in reported central bank holdings of gold. So starting in 2008, you can see that there has been a massive increase in the central bank holdings of gold. And so when we talk about a global monetary reset, as I'll continue to point out here, what I think is happening is that the dollar as the world reserve currency is being replaced. And it's being replaced in a lot of ways by gold. Now, I'm not saying that there's been an official announcement, but if you look at what the countries are holding, that they're now holding more gold than U.S. treasuries. This is a significant change. This is a global monetary reset that's happening. But you start to see, though, that a lot of it ties into the BRICS nations. Now, I've been talking about de-dollarization for a long time here, and there's been a lot of speculation about, are the BRICS nations going to be unveiling some sort of currency that's tied to precious metals or tied to commodities in some sort of particular way? And that's what we're seeing. So looking at China, here's a post. It says, from Bloomberg, Beijing has been accumulating gold reserves for a decade and is now seeking to woo other nations to store gold in China's bonded warehouses and trade the metal on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. So this is showing the leading buyers of bullion and the change from 2000 to 2024. You can see that Russia and China, both very, very intertwined in a lot of ways. Since 2000, they have massively increased their amount of gold bullion and their buying of gold bullion. Then you have India, Turkey, Japan. The U.S. is actually running in a negative in terms of their acquisition has dropped since 2000. Okay, so continuing. So this is an interview with Dr. Judy Shelton. There's a post that says, China's gold strategy, the quiet accumulation. Dr. Judy Shelton told me something striking. China, the world's largest producer and consumer of gold, is almost certainly not being transparent about how much it really holds. Through the Shanghai Gold Exchange, Beijing has quietly built the infrastructure to merge gold and the yuan, setting the stage for settlement through digital instruments or stablecoins. She warned that China may soon propose a new international monetary system anchored to gold, a move that could redefine global finance. Her message was clear. We still have the world's largest gold reserves. Let's do that. Let's use that to our advantage before China does. Again, she warned that China may soon propose a new international monetary system anchored to gold, a move that could redefine global finance. Redefining global finance, a global monetary reset. And that is what I think that we're seeing here. Here's a post from Darth Powell. Great account over there on X. You know what's coming. Okay, this is a chart. This is China's gold stock levels from 2009 to 2025. What is China preparing for? This is insane. Look at that spike. What is China preparing for? And he says, you know what? Now, I want to continue here. If you wonder what's going on with gold, here is a must-watch breakdown from Sornthek. He's the account VBL's Ghost. He's the publisher of GoldFix. He's a professor of finance. So here is a must-watch breakdown from him from his appearance on TFTC this week. Things have been in motion behind the scenes for 15 years. So this right here, this is about 5 minutes. I'm going to play this for you. What he's explaining here is he's explaining what's happening. And the fact that this video only has 36,000 views is mind-boggling, because if you look at the scale of what's happening here and how important it is and how a global monetary reset changes everything about our way of life, the fact that no one's paying attention to this is crazy. But that's also why I'm doing this. That's why I'm doing this show, because I'm saying, hey, I know it's, the John Bolton stuff is really cool and that's really important and everything, but there is a much bigger thing happening, and I hope I can help bring it to your attention. So I'm going to play this video. It's 5 minutes long. I might play the whole thing. I'll see. Either way, I'll full screen it so you can kind of see it, and there's good captions on there for you. So 5:23. Let's go and play that for you.
I did deep dive research on the BRICS behavior at their summit this year in May. And that summit, which did not get a lot of press this year, there wasn't a lot of hype for various reasons, but I wrote 5 articles on it. And one of the articles was I identified, from piecing together articles everywhere, from talking to 2 sources in mainland China, from talking to someone in Hong Kong, that China, to assuage fears of the other BRICS people, had said, look, we want you to use the yuan for currency. And, let's say you're Saudi Arabia. You're like, okay, I'll use it. But you know what? I may not trust the U.S., but the U.S. dollar is better than the yuan. What are you backing it with? Well, we're backing it with our economy. We're not going to back it with gold. But I'll tell you what we will do. We'll do something the U.S. doesn't do. We'll let you convert it into gold freely. No problem. And the Saudi Arabians said, everyone, just for instance, they said, that's great. Where will the gold stay? This is like 5 years ago. Where will the gold stay? Well, it'll stay in China. They're like, nah, that's not going to work. We don't want, right? We just ended this problem with the U.S. Everyone's pulled their gold back. And so China comes up with a plan. And the SGE, which is the Shanghai Gold Exchange, that's their physical exchange, they create an international division, SGE International, SGEI. And the SGEI starts partnering with vaults in various BRICS countries. And they create a network. So I'm Saudi Arabia. I give them my oil. They give me yuan. And I say, you know what? I want to convert this into gold. Will you make me a market? And they do, China. And the yuan gets converted into gold. Where's the gold go? It goes into their vault. So in a sense, in a crypto way, they've decentralized or in non-crypto, you say they diversify the geographic risk of ownership of the physical metal, but they're still accounting for it in a it's like old school blockchain. It's like Fred Flintstone chain. But and so that made the Saudis and the other countries in the BRICS more comfortable holding yuan. I could convert it into gold. I could see the gold. I don't have to worry about it going anywhere. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about an accountant going in and auditing them, to an extent. And they gradually got more comfortable with it. At the same time, they got less comfortable with U.S. treasuries. And so at the BRICS summit, the Chinese had homework, and their homework was to internationalize the yuan and to internationalize gold ownership. And this is what they announced: Hong Kong, Singapore, the Golden Corridor. I'm not sure if I named that or they named that, but there's like a Golden Corridor, Singapore and Macau, all along this area. The Shanghai Cooperative Organization. And they're saying all these vaults are now connected, which means you can arbitrage back and forth, which means every country can have their gold close enough to see, to visit. And I went, this is great. I see what they're doing. They're making sure people are trustworthy in gold. And I said, well, what are they doing about the volatility in gold?
Ladies and gentlemen, our world is being poisoned. You know that. Every day we're exposed to more chemicals sprayed into our skies, leaching into our food, and polluting our air and water. From pesticides and heavy metals to hormone disruptors and synthetic additives, these toxins are bombarding our bodies and destroying our health. But there's something you can do to fight back, and it starts with your gut. Kimchi One from Brightcore Nutrition contains over 900 strains of beneficial probiotics that help flush toxins, restore gut balance, and support your immune system. So when your gut's strong, your body can actually resist all these toxins. You're going to feel better. You're going to have better digestion, more energy, clearer thinking, stronger immunity, even improvements in your skin, hair, and metabolism. And this isn't just hype. Studies show that fermented foods like kimchi can reduce the risk of obesity, improve blood sugar, and support whole body wellness. Kimchi One is all natural, non-GMO, dairy-free, gluten-free, and 100% made in the USA by a company that actually cares about your health. Imagine that. And today, you can get an exclusive offer just for my viewers, 25% off with the code MANINAMERICA by clicking on the link in the description below. Or just call my friends over at Brightcore now at 888-575-6488, and their educated staff will make sure that Kimchi One is right for you. Again, that's 888-575-6488.
Right? Well, because the U.S. can spoof it lower. Anyone can spoof it lower. It's not that deep. Well, turns out they solved that too. Now, I don't know if it's going to work, but they solved that. And their solve was the gold will be carried on everyone's balance sheet according to a moving average, not according to the price at the end of the day. So 200-day moving average. And let's face it, over the long run, gold holds value because it's gold, right? I mean, there's no synthetic gold yet, at least not in large size yet. Okay, so they create the network of vaults, and I go, all right, this is for the BRICS Summit. They address the concept of price volatility. I go, all right, that's good. And then I read something, I wrote on it, and I went, oh shit, this is what they're going to do next. Right? And this is what they're going to do. They announced that they're going to be partnering with vaults in countries that need to build infrastructure. So you're thinking about the African BRICS countries, right? Why? Well, I'm a country in Africa, Ghana, and I've got a shit ton of gold, and it's just sitting there. And if I want to use it, I have to give it to the IMF, and they give me treasuries, and I borrow money, and I build a road, right? All right. But I want to do business with China. China is building roads and airports and cutting deals because they're colonizing economically. We know that. China says, you can use your gold. So I'm an African country that needs an airport built to simplify it, and I've got gold. I put it in the vault, which is in the system of the Shanghai Exchange setup, and then China loans me the money on the gold directly, not through treasuries, not through some swap deal. The gold is there. China trusts them, and then I take the yuan and I go back to China and I say, build me an airport. And so what they've done is they created project financing.
So perhaps, hopefully that makes sense to you. But this is so important to understand what's going on here. Because our US dollar, right now I'm having to show you, but hold up as an example, our dollar was pulled off the gold standard in 71. And since then, what's given the dollar its value primarily has been because it is the world reserve currency. It's a petrodollar. Countries have had to hold the dollar for trading in oil. The countries have held U.S. treasuries to back their own currencies. That's what it's a reserve. It's a global reserve. That's what has given the value. It's what has propped up our dollar. How is it you think that the politicians and the bankers and the Federal Reserve, they can print so much money, like trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars? It's like monopoly money. How can they keep doing that, yet the dollar still has its value? Now, of course, we know that groceries are more expensive and houses are more expensive. The stock market's higher. Those are all indicators that the dollar is losing its value. They're all indicators. So when you get excited, it's like, oh my gosh, wow, my house is up. It's worth an extra $200,000 in the past 3 years. Okay, great. But so is the cost of groceries. So is everything else. It's like, that's why that article I showed you from Zero Hedge talking about, I'll pull it up again just to kind of highlight that. The importance of, as he says, Measure assets in gold, not dollars, because if you measure assets in gold, the truth is revealed. You can see how deflated our currency has become. And if you look at that and you couple that with what's happening with the LBMA and the breakdown of the paper market and the loss of trust in paper and ETFs and the fiat currencies, I think that China has been strategically waiting for the right moment to do this. And right now, if you look at a lot of the discussions about what's happening with the price of gold and currency and the dollar, China's not really in the discussion. People are very focused on what's happening with BlackRock and their silver ETFs and looking at what's happening in London and the bullion dealers. But what's happening, what we're seeing, though, is that there is a global shift. As I point out, I think one of the other tweets I was showing you before, let's see, let me kind of pull it up again. Where are we? Let's see. Here we go. Yep, here we go. This makes more sense to you now. Gold is sending a message. Huge changes have started to arrive within the world's monetary system. The role for the dollar is declining, while gold is slowly returning as a cornerstone to the international financial system. Monetary system resets like this happen only once or twice every 100 years, and it takes years or even decades to unfold. So this is what I think is happening right now. And I think that China is watching this. I'm sure they've played a part in this. They're watching a global, just sudden and intense lack of faith in paper and fiat. This is why central banks are now holding more gold than U.S. Treasuries. They see the writing on the wall. They know what's happening. So continuing here. Okay, we played that video. This is a post from Eric Young, Hong Kong Young. Now, it's a video of a guy that's talking. I'm not going to play it because it's just in Chinese, but what he translates what's happening here. He says, the Shanghai Gold Exchange authorized participant old man is spilling information again. This time he's telling us the possible upcoming locations of the next SGE, Shanghai Gold Exchange, offshore gold vaults. Quote, the Shanghai Gold Exchange plans to establish overseas gold delivery warehouses, and I predict 4 cities will be prioritized. Hong Kong, China; Singapore, the hub of the Southeast Asia; Zurich, Switzerland, the European hub; and Dubai, UAE, the Middle Eastern hub. These 4 cities impose no tariffs, value-added taxes, goods and service taxes, or declaration quantity restrictions on the import and export of 9999, which is pure, gold bars and ingots. Gold trading is highly active in these locations. Among them, Zurich, Switzerland serves as the global center for gold refining and storage. Additionally, gold ingots imported into the EU are also exempt from tariffs. For gold bar transactions in these 4 cities, anti-money laundering declarations and purchase documentation are required. Furthermore, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China and the Bank of China have branch vaults in all 4 cities, making the storage and withdrawal of gold bars and ingots highly convenient. So you can see what they're not necessarily introducing a gold-backed yuan, right? They're not coming out and saying, look, we're backing our yuan with gold directly, like as a pinned, 1-to-1 value or whatever ratio. But what they're doing is they're saying that we're now going to just allow you to exchange the yuan for gold directly. And they're setting up these hubs, as a guy mentioned in that video I played. They're not saying, hey, we're going to keep all the gold in China. I wouldn't trust that. But say you live in Europe and you know that, hey, actually the Shanghai Gold Exchange has a vault in Zurich, and I can keep my gold there and then get the yuan in exchange for it and use that as a currency. This is directly undermining the entire dollar system, which is the global reserve currency. This is absolutely significant. But what's crazy, though, is that here in America, people just don't see what's happening. That's why I said in the headline, I think I put that Americans will be blindsided. That's the case. Americans, how many Americans hold physical gold and silver? So few. If you're watching this and if you have a couple ounces of silver, maybe an ounce of gold, you're already in like the elite class of American precious metal owning. Because Americans, they just don't know. They've got their money tied up in the 401ks and the banking system. They've got their money tied up in the dollar. And that's the key, is that their assets are sitting in the dollar, whether it's the stock market, which is dollar-based, whether it's your bank account, your 401k, whatever it is. Americans, by and large, have their assets sitting in a place that is tied directly to the US dollar. And that's why silver and gold are keys, because they bridge the gap. So if that currency, so if the US dollar fails, you don't lose all your assets, because your assets are tied into this metal, which has a global value. And actually what you will see is that if the dollar continues to go down like this, you're going to see the price of silver and gold can completely go up. That's just how it's going to work. You're seeing this inversion happening. That's why the guy was talking about, could we see a $22,000 gold and $22,000 Dow Jones? Absolutely. That's what happens, because the inversion is happening. It's flipping. It's flipping. So this right here, as an example, this is a scene at Bullion Star before opening hours. I think this post is from this morning. Bullion Star is a big dealer out of Singapore. They've also got some European and American stuff that they're doing, but this is the scene for people in Singapore lining up at the opening hours to buy gold. You don't see this in America. So why is this? What are you seeing there? These people know what's happening. Whether they know directly or whether their government has encouraged it, I can tell you, because I used to do a lot of business over in Hong Kong and China, India, Singapore. They understand gold and silver like no Americans do, very few. They hold on to it. They know its value. They keep it. When you get married, they give it as a wedding dowry. Like, they understand it. So this is Singapore, okay? Right here, people lining up since 5 a.m. in Vietnam to buy gold at all-time high. Not going to play the audio here, but you can see, again, people lining up to buy gold in Vietnam. You don't see this in America, largely because our media and our government has been so corrupted. Not to say the Asian governments aren't corrupt, but they don't want this. They don't want us to do this. They want us to keep our assets in the stock market. So this is what's going on here. And this is why this is such a significant event, because this isn't like the Weimar Republic, where it was just an isolated currency that entered into hyperinflation and collapsed. What happens if the US dollar does that? The US dollar, which is the global reserve currency. We're talking about a global financial event that we've probably never experienced on Earth before. Now, as we conclude, I want to show you a very good video, which someone made based upon a conversation of some people talking about what happened with the Weimar Republic. So here's a post from Oren Elbaz, who says, "Why is the price of gold skyrocketing? Let history be your guide." I want to play this for you. It's a little bit less than 5 minutes long, explaining what was happening in the Weimar Republic and what it looked like there. There's a lot of very important lessons for us to learn from this. So I'll full screen this for you. That way you can enjoy it without having to stare at me. And again, it's about 5 minutes long, so I'll play the whole thing for you. But please pay attention to this, because this is very important. And what is this saying? Is that those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it? Oh, here we go. This is history. Let's watch it together.
At the Ruhr district, they went on strike, and the government, as though, paid their salaries, and they did that, of course, through printing some more money. So this was like, you could say, the final blow to the paper mark. And then the price of gold goes absolutely, bananas. You see it rising to 1 million marks, then 10 million, then 100 million, then 1 billion, then 10 billion, 100 billion, and eventually it reaches all the way to 1 trillion paper marks by the end of 1923. So you have this hyperinflation taking place. It's very, very rapid. It happens within the span of 1 year. And just imagine, even if you sold your gold for 1 billion marks, Yeah, you bought it at 1 mark. You sold it for 1 billion marks per 1 gold mark. You're under the impression that you made a killing, but in fact, you lost everything because within a few months, it's going to be 1 trillion. So you already lost 99.9 or whatever of your money.
It's just hard to comprehend that it could move along that quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it would be the equivalent, if my like rough math is about right, it'd be like $38 trillion per troy ounce, US
Something
dollars.
crazy like that. Yes, yes.
It would be absolutely insane. The money would be obviously like worthless at that point.
Yes.
Like the fiat, yeah.
Yeah,
When you
it's
see
like
such a
nothing.
thing, it's not happening because gold is more valuable. It's because the currency is collapsing. And you get these absurd numbers. Now, people are not equipped to even, comprehend such numbers. I mean, if you were following the price of gold in recent year here, you expected it to be somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000. Okay, it went above 2,000. Okay, 2,100, 2,200. Suddenly, we've reached.
Just a quick note. This video, I think, was recorded. They're showing the pricing of gold on May 12th, earlier this year. So I think this video was made around May this year, but it doesn't mean it's any less relevant. It's actually even more relevant considering what's happened to the price of gold since then.
Recently reached 3,500. And it happened very rapidly. I mean, like people are scratching their heads. But what if this is just the beginning? This is the point of the exercise. Why am I bringing up this story about Weimar Germany? Because I want people to start imagining that just because the price of gold doubled or almost doubled, it doesn't mean it can't double again. It doesn't mean it can go up tenfold. It doesn't mean it can go up 1,000-fold. It can. It certainly can if the dollar is indeed collapsing. I'm not saying that this is exactly what we're seeing right now. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm just entertaining the possibility. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And so in these situations, it can be hard to imagine, but what the best thing to do would be is just hold on, just dig your nails in and hold on to all of your precious metals for as long as you possibly can. And, hopefully until the point that it seems like there's going to be some sort of monetary reset, that this fiat system that you're currently enduring is going to get replaced with something else.
Yes. Really, in that year, in 1923, you saw those absurd scenes like children playing with stacks of banknotes and people burning them at the fireplace for heat because they were cheaper than firewood. And people, with wheelbarrows of cash in order to buy the most essential items. And for the population, such a thing is incredible suffering because people can lose all their savings almost overnight. And people who don't have the experience of a hyperinflation, they have difficulty imagining such a thing. That the currency which they worked so hard to acquire, all their lives, suddenly loses all value. So I think that's something we should be aware of because at least as far as the people in charge are behaving, they're behaving as though the currency is worthless. So why shouldn't we?
So I wasn't showing you that to scare you, that video. I was showing it just to show you what's happened before. What happens before when a currency loses its value, when a currency enters into hyperinflation. And with the amount of money printing of the US dollar, what's stopping it from doing that? Well, one of the main things stopping it is the fact that it's been the global reserve currency and people are holding on to it. But what happens when people start switching away? Which is what we're seeing right now. When they start moving to other currencies, when they start moving to physical gold. What happens to the value of the US dollar when they've printed it so much, yet no one really wants it anymore? So do I think that the dollar is going to enter into hyperinflation and we're going to see, a chicken costs, $10,000? I don't know. I hope not, because it means a lot of suffering for people. A lot of suffering. But I think it's a possibility. I think it's a possibility. And the indicators that I'm seeing that I presented here are what make me personally believe that it is a very real possibility that we could see that in our lifetimes and maybe even much sooner than you might expect. especially when you look at what's happening with the paper market, with the whole pyramid scheme of silver and ETFs and all these promissory notes, that's collapsing. But when you add in what China is doing with the Shanghai Gold Exchange, and you look at that, and you look at the long-term plan they've had of the de-dollarization campaign, that's when it started to click for me. Because this show wasn't going to be initially about that. This show is going to be covering what was happening with gold and silver and give an update. And we're seeing, some regional banks, getting hit, and there's some, ideas of bank runs, et cetera. But as I started, digging into this and seeing what China was doing, and it all clicked for me. It's like, oh my goodness. I think this is what's happening, is that China is making a move. They've been making a move for a while. They're very strategic. They're very long-term in their thinking, way more long-term than most of us here in America or your Western countries. And I think that they are working to replace the US dollar with gold, but then make sure their own currency is very, very, very closely tied to that gold. And so I think that could we see silver go to $500 an ounce, $1,000 an ounce, $5,000 an ounce? Yeah, I mean, it could, right? But what's that mean though? Because we're using the broken measuring stick to measure it. Could gold go to $20,000 an ounce, $50,000 an ounce in US dollars? It absolutely could. It doesn't mean that gold has gone up 10 times in value. It means the dollar has lost 10 times of its value, basically. And so again, this is why I'm focused on this topic, and I have been for quite some time now, because this is absolutely significant. Now, look, maybe Trump has some plan for this, and maybe he's, like Judy Shelton said, he's really building up our own reserves in gold, and there's a strategy there. I hope that he is. I hope that he's got a way to counter this. There's been speculation of it, but we'll see. But what China's doing, and what's happening with the paper markets out of London, and what's happening with the price of gold and silver, and what's happened, the fact that so many bullion dealers can no longer fulfill their orders because the demand for gold and silver has been so high, especially outside the United States. These are all indicators that the current monetary system is breaking down and it's being replaced. And maybe it's a good thing, right? As tough as it is, maybe it's a good thing to go back to a monetary system that's closely tied to gold. To me, my perspective is gold is God's money. Gold is God's money. Silver, it was here on earth well before man. So that is the show. Don't want to scare you, but just want to educate you. If you still have a lot of your assets sitting in paper money, bank account, 401k, etc., I'm not giving you financial advice. Do your own research. Gold could come back down tomorrow. So again, just do your own research. But for me, I'm trying as much as I can to not have hardly any money in the bank, and trying as much as I can to keep all my money in gold and silver, because that is an asset that will bridge this system. I don't want to lose everything. Anyway, but if you're looking to do that, if you have someone you can trust, great. If you're not sure where to go to either buy gold and silver directly, have them delivered to you, or do like a 401k, like say you want to move a portion of your 401k or IRA into physical gold and silver. The company that I work with, I trust completely, is Noble Gold. The CEO, Colin Plume, good friend of mine, honest guy. Goldwithseth.com will take you there. You can learn more. You can fill out the form, a wealth protection kit. Call them up at 877-646-5347. They are the best in the industry, especially when it comes to IRA, 401k transfers. So that's an important thing to kind of throw out there for you, is that if you have all money sitting in 401k, they can walk you through that step. It's very easy to transfer in the ways that you can avoid the fees. But anyway, do your own research. Take everything that I say with a grain of salt. Do your own research. But I'll have all the links for that, goldwithseth.com, and the phone number in the description to the show below. All right, thank you. And don't forget to share this if you enjoyed it. Make sure you like, comment, all that good stuff. All right, thank you. I'll see you again next time. Let me ask you something. How much time do you spend every day clicking around online, searching, scrolling, juggling a dozen tabs? It eats up a lot of time. Well, there's a new AI-powered web browser from Perplexity called Comet, and it's completely changing how you use the internet. Comet doesn't just give you answers, it actually does things for you. It clicks, types, scrolls, and gets stuff done in real time, like booking flights, finding hotels, ordering food, even summarizing long articles or videos. Now, I'll be honest, I'm hesitant about AI overall, but I started using Comet as a way to get around censorship. For example, when I search on Google, does the government have weather modification projects? All I get are fact checkers, official statements, and the same tired conspiracy theory label. But when I ask Comet the same question, it actually pulls up the real documents, declassified government files, congressional reports, even weather control patents. Hard facts, not filtered spin. So if you could use a good tool that gives you extra help with online tasks while also arming you with information to prove to your friends that you're not as crazy as they think you are, this could be a great solution. So you can try Perplexity's new AI browser Comet by heading to pplx.ai/MIA. And when you download it, you're also going to get a free month of Rumble Premium. So that link is in the description below. Again, it's pplx.ai/MIA. So take back your time and take back the truth online.